On this episode of Still Loading.
We humbly await your decree, Your Highness.
I know. I'll use a trick that always worked for my father. Either one of you must give up the cow, or I will have the royal cook divide her between you.
Well, I'm not giving up my house.
Me neither. Take her to the cook.
Huh?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval, and today, more Captain N, baby. It is that time of the month. Out of context, that sounds awful. That sounds very different.
I was going to make a really bad joke, but I'll refrain.
Let's not go there. It is Captain N, baby. So we are here to talk about a new episode of Captain N, the Game Master. This is season 2, episode 6, The Lost City of Congoland, released on October 13th, 1990, and written once again by our pal, our buddy from last month's episode, Dennis O'Flaherty. And let's go with some of these initial observations like we always do. I had you do it last month, Dexter, first, so I'm going to jump off with this one. With this one, I will say Donkey Kong has quickly become one of my favorite characters in this show, just for his lack of character. There's very little that personifies him in this show, and I kind of love that. He's just nothing but this mindless rage thing that periodically decides to wear army fatigues and and a whistle around his neck, and of course he's got that adorable tie. But Donkey Kong's in this, and this episode is ridiculous. Actually, let me hear yours, and I have one other observation I want to make. I just want to make sure I'm not going to take that observation. I don't think I will, but just to be on the safe side, what's your observation from this episode?
Well, first of all, my observation from your observation, who's making Donkey Kong's clothes? That's a lot of fabric.
It's Prince Plenty or whatever, right? That's got to be who it is.
Yeah,
it's the only person who could. That's how they appease him. He makes it. He hand knits ties for him.
No, my first observation was this is the Empire Strikes Back of our Dennis trilogy.
Even though this is actually, you're right. I'm sorry. I was like, this is his last one. No, this is the second to last for Dennis O'Flaherty.
No, honestly though, my big observation was, wait, we have recurring like stuff like this because we're back in Congoland. Prince Plenty's back in the town of Plentiful or whatever it was called, and the lore continues to expand with Congoland. So I was taken aback by like, oh wow, we're going to have a recurring kind of a sequel, literally a sequel episode where we're kind of following up on characters in an area that, it's not just, it is just an episode, but there's a continuation kind of happening.
Yeah, I never thought about that. You're right. This is really the first time we've seen like a world that they fleshed out a little bit more in this show. I'm like, I know that's not canon to what Nintendo actually ended up doing, but like if we're taking the Captain N-verse as its own thing, this is the first time they've really kept that like an expanded version of a game world and kind of kept the continuity of it. Because like you do see stuff where they'll go back to Castlevania, but like there's no really like any lore.
Or Mount Icarus or whatever. They go back to those, but they always look different, and they don't necessarily run into the same characters. And this was the first time where it's same characters, same everything.
Mm-hmm. And I did find it funny in this episode. I forgot to mention it in the last one, the big game, where what the game elements were. We already mentioned California Games in that episode because it's California Games. They also say Mega Man 2, which I find, I guess just because of the Robot Masters in it. There's Mega Man 2 Robot Masters. In this one, the game elements are Donkey Kong Jr., and I'm like, how? I don't like how, like, there's no Donkey Kong Jr. It's just Donkey Kong. I don't
Yeah.
understand. That could just be, this is Wikipedia that I'm reading off of, so whoever wrote it, it's on them. I don't think that's an official description. So I disagree with that characterization. I don't
And they
think that.
used the original Donkey Kong music in the beginning. I liked that.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I was like, oh yay, they incorporated that.
My other observation that I wanted to make before we dive in earnest into the episode is I really liked. I think in general with season two, I mentioned a big observation about season two, how it's just I didn't like it. I don't like it as much as season one. But one thing I do like more than season one are the design, like the art designs in general. I really think there's a lot more creativity with the monsters that they fight, the worlds that they create. I really feel like there's a lot of interesting stuff, like between how they personify Tetris, the world of Tetris, in Trouble with Tetris, the expansion of Donkey Kong lore in this, because remember at the time Donkey Kong Country didn't exist. There was no expanded Donkey Kong lore. It was just what we knew of Donkey Kong, which was just in Mario running up some steel girders, and that's pretty much it. I really like what they did with Congo Land in this, where they kind of fleshed it out and they add some lore to it. And I will say the lore is not great, but they did at least something. And that kind of leads us into the beginning of this episode, where they talk about this weird prophecy that is starting to come true. And the lost city of Congo Land is rising again after 1,000 years. And the first one is right in Donkey Kong's front yard, literally right underneath his bed where he's sleeping. This little thing kind of pops up through this little vine, pops up through the floor in his
Right
house,
under his butt.
right, pokes him right in the butthole. Buttholes are back again, baby. Sorry, just the side note, Dex. I'm going to keep this part in, but I'm going to keep it vague right now. Remind me after we're done recording. I have another T-shirt idea for you that I want to run by you. We'll talk about that though in a little bit. And it doesn't involve buttholes, I promise. I just realized that could be conspicuous considering. I know. But yeah, so this is all happening on Congo Land, and then it cuts over to, well, there is a scene I want to talk about. In Congo Land, it shows like the city of Plenty, or whatever the place where Prince Plenty lives, whatever that place is called. And they're talking about how the lost city of Congo Land is rising again right underneath in Donkey Kong's front yard, and Prince Plenty gets awoken out of his sleep to hear this news. Well, his bedroom ends up getting destroyed by these vines, or like the earthquakes caused by these vines. I'm so confused by the layout of this house of his, because you see him sleeping in his bed. A guy comes up, wakes him up. When his room gets destroyed, it's literally on a platform on this pillar that is just in the middle of this empty silo. And so when the thing breaks, they just fall into the abyss. And I'm like, what the fuck is, like, what? Like, why? A, how did anyone get up there? B, why would you build a house like that? Why build a room like that? The only support is just a tiny like support beam in the center. It makes no sense.
Especially for Donkey Kong, who's giant.
Yeah. It's just well, I mean, that wasn't Donkey Kong. That was just the. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. Especially because if Donkey Kong's going to walk by, he's going to shake everything, and then it could just break anyway.
Right.
It's just silly.
It reminds me of, was it Corrin's Tower from Dragon Ball? Sorry, anime reference.
No, you don't have to apologize for an anime reference. It's just it's silly. It's just the design of it just made no sense to me, but it made me laugh.
Yeah. They also set up that Lana's doing a, like, she's seeing her subjects, and they're coming and asking for her advice as the princess of Videoland. And these two like one of the problems she has to solve is these two farmers show up with a cow, and they're arguing over whose cow it is. One says the cow eats on his property, and the other one says the cow sleeps on his property, and they want Princess Lana to choose whose cow it is. And so she's like, check this out. I'm going to do what my dad always does. And they're like, we're going to cut up the cow and then you can each have half. And they're like, okay, cool.
I actually really liked that joke. Like most other, because the whole, it's the whole King Solomon thing. That's like,
Right.
it's the same thing from the Bible. Um,
Yeah.
but I like how they subvert it by just, nope, we'll just take a cut up cow. It's fine.
Yeah. And the cow's like, I'm out of here, and runs away. And I wrote in my notes, that cow is toast. But like that cow's gonna die.
Yeah, and then Lana is struggling. She's wondering how like her father ever managed to be king to make all these decisions. There's a line of people waiting to see her, and she wants to she wants to get, and there's a whole bunch of mail for her to answer as well, so she's feeling overwhelmed. And then Prince Plenty shows up, like rushes through a warp zone and says, Princess Lana, we need your help. And I don't know why, this part just bugged me. He comes in and he goes, this crystal from the Congoland library will tell the story. And then he proceeds to narrate over everything. I'm like, it's not telling the story then. You're telling the story with a weird version of PowerPoint. And that
I'm also imagining a library full of crystals when he says
right?
that.
Did this precede the Donkey Kong crystals that we would find in Donkey Kong Country? Like the crystal coconuts?
Yeah. Ooh.
Oh,
Could be.
Captain N, baby, coming in clutch once again, like creating lore that was not there before. Yo, that rhymed. Creating lore that was not there before. I'm pretty proud of that. I'm not gonna
There's our
lie.
tagline right there.
I know, right? So he's telling the story that he tells is that in Congo land there was an evil. They don't say evil. They don't actually know. There was like this wizard or like this ruler. Witch doctor, that's what it was, named Conga, just called Conga. I guess that's what the name, based off, what Conga land is named after. I'm not sure, but Conga, and he created this. It was literally a living city. I do like this idea, like where it's the city of vines, where it's literally alive. Like it was a city that was meant to be alive, and then an earthquake buried it like 1,000 years ago, and no one had seen it since. And you have to find his treasure. We have to find the treasure of the witch, his or its treasure. And of course, Mother Brain is watching in all of this and realizes, oh, I got to get that power first. Here's another observation, though, that this scene where Mother Brain's watching reminds me of, or made me think of. In this episode, for some reason, Eggplant Wizard and King Hippo are very like they act like her children in this, because they call her Mama a lot. But Mama Brain, they say, like, but Mama Brain, it's so Mother Brain tells them to go to Donkey Kong, to Conga Land, and Eggplant Wizard goes, but Mama Brain, Donkey Kong will squash us into eggplant butter.
Yes, I remember that. I remember the visual of eggplant butter too being unsettling. But I didn't notice that they were calling her Mama Brain, but you're right. They were. The other thing that I wrote down in my notes was when they get to Congo Land, they're like automatically assaulted by the creatures that are coming also from this uprising of the old Congo Land, the living Congo Land, which felt very kind of Atlantis with the mythology of it. But they're first attacked by these weird birds with like these long cylindrical beaks. And in my notes I wrote, "Dear Lord, these bird designs," because they're both like amazing and horrifying. In the way that Lana disposes of them, she pulls out a bazooka that shoots corks. And she's able to nail like these tiny, like, the size of a bottle cork.
It's like
it's maybe like an inch in diameter.
Yeah.
And so these birds' beaks openings are like barely bigger than an inch in diameter, 2 inches in diameter. And she's like, pow, 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 pow. And they're like way far away. And she nails each of their beaks with a cork. And they all fly away because they can no longer do what they were going to do. Because didn't they say like, oh, these birds, they're like the most poisonous birds ever?
Yeah, something like that. Uh,
And immediately after, or maybe it's not immediately after that, but they're following a map that Prince Plenty gave them, and they're like, "This is where we've got to go to find the treasure." And I also wrote down, Prince Plenty's map is terrible. It looks like it's just a bunch of like blue, I guess, for water, and then there's like a white circle in the middle. I'm like, that's not a map. It's just a picture of a dot.
none. I didn't even notice that. I'm gonna have to like hold on. I need to find this map now. Um, I,
Let's see if I can find
I
it.
said it in the last episode, and it really is like I feel true for these two episodes that we're doing back to back. Is that it was so hard for me to concentrate on this episode, on these two episodes. It was just I don't know what it was about them, but they were just very hard for me to you know figure out what was going on or just pay attention because they were all over the place. There was a lot of like stuff where they would just like jump through exposition really quick and it just was very confusing. I'm trying to see now the map you're talking about. When do we see this map again?
I'm jumping. I think it's around 5 minutes or so. Let me see if I
Okay.
can find it.
I'll see if I can find it as well. I do want so one of the things so you mentioned before like Lana gets that like cork gun or whatever, but she gets it because like Dr. Light provides a bunch of weapons that they could potentially use for this mission. And it like when you look at the still of it, there's like spring shoes, there's just like I don't know, the one thing looks like a faucet. I'm so confused by like all of the designs of all of these. But Lana's talking to Kevin, trying to confide in him like I don't know if I'm going to be a good leader. I don't know if this is going to work. And Kevin's like, you're going to do fine. You just got to, take it easy on yourself. And she's like, I guess you're right. And then walks over and proceeds to whip out a bazooka.
Yes, I love and that she's such a crack shot with the bazooka too.
Hmm.
And Simon puts on like a Crocodile Dundee hat. I think
Hmm.
I don't know if that's what they're going for or not, or like I guess you could say Bayou Billy if we're talking video games. Oh, and I guess that's why the birds show up. Is that Simon picks up a
He,
little like
yes, he whistles, and that's kind of like how it happens. I'm looking at the design of the birds, and they're terrifying too because their
yeah
eyes like bulge out of their face. It's really uncomfortable.
yeah
Um, they're trying to go find this lost treasure of Congo, and they get a steamboat out of nowhere. Like there's no explanation as to how they got this steamboat. They're just riding a steamboat on a river. And I once again the visual creativity of this, where it's Congo land, it's already been established. Like there is um, floating rivers and
yeah.
creeks and whatnot, and it's just it I don't know, it's really cool, but Donkey Kong standing in the middle of this circular floating river, and Lana and Simon bail out, and Simon's like princesses and Simon first or something like that, or I forget exactly. Princesses and Belmonts first, I forget
Abandoned
exactly.
ship. Yeah, abandoned ship.
He,
Women in Simon's or whatever. Abandoned
yeah,
first.
something like that. And Lana's like, Simon, I can't abandon, I can abandon, I don't mind abandoning the ship, but I can't abandon my duty. And I'm like, no one was assuming you were. Like, you just, the ship's going down because Donkey Kong's losing his shit. Like, I don't know what you want out of this. Um, it was just so strange. And so Donkey Kong is standing in the middle of like that river, the floating river, and that's when Lana and Simon. Oh yeah, we talk about Lana and Simon abandoning ship. I can abandon ship, but I can't abandon my duty. Lana and Simon then jump off onto like this. Like he brings like this paraglider thing, and they float off into the jungle somewhere, leaving. And she tells Kevin and the rest of the team to be like, "Hey, distract Donkey Kong for us." and they don't really do much. They just kind of sail around him in a circle while Donkey Kong's just smashing things like up and down. And I just love Donkey Kong because of how insane he is. He just just the random yells, and they do end up losing the boat, and they have to jump out. They all put on spring shoes, and I remember watching it this morning, and be like, "This is the dumbest moment in this episode." Like they're like they all have spring shoes. They keep hopping on these floating islands that you did, to be fair, continuity, because that was in the first Congoland one. They were riding those islands. So wait, why wouldn't they ride them this time? I don't know. I'm not going to try to understand the continuity differences, but they're bouncing along and they finally land. And Princess Lana and Simon in the meantime are trying to find this lost treasure. And they kind of do a little bit of Indiana Jones stuff. And this is the part you were talking about before, Dexter, with the map, where you see the map laid out and it's at, like you said, 724. And this is not a good map at all. There's no reference to anything. You see north, south, east, and west. You see the compass. And then it just looks like it's a white dot in the middle of the blue, and then the sun on the opposite side. I genuinely don't know what it's supposed to be showing. There's no frame of reference for like land. Like none of it makes any sense. But they do end up finding the treasure, and they pull some Indiana Jones stuff is going on, like they what did I have right? They some Indiana Jones things, and oh my gosh, I did skip over one thing I thought was funny. When they're trying out all the weapons from Dr. Light, and Simon inadvertently calls those creepy ass birds that Lana plugs up with a cork. He goes like, "Thanks for the advice, Captain Nitwit," or something like that. He blames that on Kevin, even though he's the one that did it. And he's like, "Just leave this up to Simon Belmont." And then he takes his whip, whips a coconut, and hits Donkey Kong in the face. And that's what makes Donkey Kong enraged at them. So it's his fault they had to abandon ship.
Yes.
Of course. And they do find this, like, not really temple. They find this thing where the treasure's at. And these traps, and I put that in very loose quotations, are easily like just they're nothing. Like the one is dodging a boulder, and with plenty of space to dodge a boulder. Like there's easily space on either side that you can just ignore. Like the boulder could easily miss. So there's nothing for that. There was one other thing that I can't remember.
But they made a bowling joke with the boulder too, because it's knocking over like the totem poles. And then there's like a little divot in the ground at the bottom of the hill, so that when it reaches the bottom, it just sets in that divot. It's like perfectly shaped like the boulder. And then a little sign comes down with an X. And I was like, I guess that's a bowling joke, because it was knocking down those totem poles.
But then they go, X marks the spot.
Yeah, and then Lana's like, well, X marks the spot. And I was like, these jokes aren't like... they're not working. They don't mesh, because that's not where the treasure is, right? It's not like with the boulder.
It couldn't be there. Like, why would it appear right where the boulder landed? And of course, that's where it is. It comes out from the ground. It just rises up. I'm like, they didn't have to dig. Yeah. Like, how has no one found this fucking thing in 1,000 years when all you have to do is just walk into the general area, a boulder will attack you, and that's it. There's absolutely no need for this. Oh my god, I was so upset by this moment. Like it made absolutely no sense. And I feel like I keep using that phrase a lot, but this whole show, these 2 episodes are just bad. They find the treasure. Go on.
I was going to kind of go off of when they find the treasure. Quentin Tarantino steals the glow when they open the treasure. I was like, are they going to do a Pulp Fiction here where we don't see what the treasure is? We just see the glow. But that the shot is just like Pulp Fiction when they open up the briefcase and the light shines on them. Same thing, but it's like a pink glow from this treasure chest.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you go on, but that it has the headdress of Conga inside.
It has the headdress of Conga, and Mother Brain. That's when Mother Brain comes up. And I actually kind of like the performance Levi Stubbs gives, where he's like, "Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me." He like freaks out. He's like saying, "Give it to me," like really fast, over and over and over again. And Lana's like, not a chance, Mother Brain. And of course, then there's a bit of a fight that ensues. It's getting passed back and forth between Lana and King Hippo and Eggplant Wizard and Mother Brain, and they're all fighting over it. And of course, it pops out of someone's hand and lands perfectly placed on Lana's head. Of course, because that's how life works. And lands on Lana's head, and she turns evil. She gets possessed by the spirit of the witch doctor Conga. And this leads me to another part that infuriated me. Oh God, Dexter's showing up this a still from when Lana gets turned into it. That's terrible.
Yeah.
That should be the still for that episode.
Yeah, I think it might be because she just holds that face for a while. It's like this weird half lid, half mouth open
Right.
face that she has as she's being like taken over by the headdress.
Makes me super uncomfortable. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But how does nobody realize that she's evil now? Like, it should be very clear. Like, it's painfully obvious
Or at least
that
that
she
she's
is
not
evil.
herself, that she's being possessed.
Yes. Like, there should be it should be noticeable. Like, there should be no reason that you don't recognize the fact that she's evil now, because she doesn't speak the same way. She clearly has suddenly has powers. Well, actually, no, that's the whole thing. That's at least fair. They knew it was going to give her powers, but Kevin is so confused by this. Like, he still doesn't believe her, even though she's saying evil stuff. Like, it's really obvious. I forget exactly what she says, but it's honestly pretty obvious. I'm trying to see what some of the other. Oh yeah, some of the other traps were just there's a bunch of vines trying to attack them, and Simon whipped them away with his whip. But Kevin doesn't realize that Lana is evil until she just picks him up and tosses him like a rag doll.
That was pretty awesome.
There was a moment, I don't remember if it was in the last episode or in this episode. Oh, I missed it. So it was last episode. There was a moment where King Hippo's nips were super uncomfortable, and the reason I was bringing up, I know that's out of the blue right now, listeners, but I'm scrolling through the episode just to make sure that I'm not missing anything, and I saw King Hippo, and it got me to think about it. But anyway, so Lana throws Kevin, and that's when they realize that something's up with her. So then she captures Donkey Kong by wrapping it up in vines, and she's already wrapped Simon up in vines at this point. And as possessed by Conga, she summons all of the evil creatures from 1,000 years ago. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, Dex, where the imagination of everything is really clever. I really like all the designs for these evil creatures. There's actually some of this kind of looks like something straight out of the Ocarina of Time, like the Deku Babas, the evil plants. It kind of reminds me of that. They don't look like it, but they got a long root that comes out of the ground, and then an evil looking face and like a large mouth, almost like a clam. It looks really cool.
Yes, I liked the mushroom monsters that came out of the water too. They were all wobbly, and their eyes were dangling down from their mushroom top.
Yeah, it's a really cool design. And then they do try to fight them, but Mega Man tries to punch him, doesn't work, and his hands just get stuck in it. But I am skipping over a moment before that, before they do come back to try to fight and rescue Lana. Mother Brain says to Eggplant Wizard, well, you're a plant. Why don't you try to get on her good, their good graces so we can eventually steal it? And Eggplant Wizard, to prove to Conga that Eggplant Wizard's on their side, he gets a giant banana to trick Donkey Kong, and that's how Donkey Kong gets captured. I'm sorry. But the scene of him getting captured, he's trying to move out of Conga Land. He's packing his bags.
That's why
that's why he's got the tie and the fedora hat on, because I guess it's the cliche of a dad from in the 40s leaving his family or something like that.
Yeah, that might need to be the thumbnail,
right? It's the tie, man. The tie is just so freaking funny. It is sad though. Later on, when you see Donkey Kong, before he's rescued, he's crying. Donkey Kong cries because he's captured. It's really sad, actually.
Almost crush them.
Yeah, I forgot his tears almost. They really have a hard time figuring out what Donkey Kong's scale is in this
Yeah.
show. Sometimes he's like so abnormally large. Like there's a moment in the beginning of this episode where you see other monkeys climbing up like like the outside of his like bed frame, and they're so tiny compared to him. They're like the size of an ant compared to him. And then other moments he's barely, like he might as well just be like 20 feet tall, which is still large, don't get me wrong, but there's a big difference between a monkey that's approximately like 7 to 8 feet tall, probably, maybe not that tall, but even like 4 or 5 feet tall, being the size of an ant compared to Donkey Kong and a 20-foot Donkey Kong. It's very, very, they're all over the damn place. Excuse me, there's no continuity with Donkey Kong's size.
It's kind of like
um
King Kong and all the different movies and different interpretations people do of that
yeah,
different size.
yeah, pretty much. So oh Jesus, I just watched the thing where like Donkey Kong cries and it almost kills Kevin. It looks like it does kill Kevin, but you can tell he like warps over to the side real quick.
Yeah, he presses the side, like on the D-pad on his belt buckle to
Yeah.
like zip out of the way.
But so this is where things get a little crazy. Like I said, Lana, the only way that they can really defeat Conga is to get the headdress off of Lana so that way it can no longer possess her. And they are trying, they do go back to Prince Plenty's like kingdom, trying to, confer with him, like, how do we stop him? I don't remember exactly what they say, but they clearly just go back and like, well, we have to save her. Like, there's nothing else we can do. Because at that point, like right when they're going to confer with him, that's when the lost city, all the vines start sprouting up in Prince Plenty's kingdom as well. So they go back to fight Lana, or to rescue Lana and fight everything else. And they rescue Donkey Kong. And then when they finally try to fight some of the monsters, that's when they're all like captured. And Donkey Kong fights like this, basically like this Godzilla plant. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yes,
it's
that's
kind of
that's
cool.
definitely what they were trying to evoke, was a, especially by the end with when Donkey Kong fights it. Yeah, it looks like a lizard, but when you see it up close, it looks like it's made out of plants. And it also kind of has like a headdress look to it, kind of like what Lana's wearing, where it almost looks like flower petals coming out of the head area. And she's riding it too. So
It's a really cool design, and I like the kaiju element of it, like the
yeah,
whole. It's just really cool. Um, the end team is now pretty much completely captured. This is another one of those episodes where it like I feel like I'm rushing through the episode, but there's really not, like, the plot points are
it's pretty
pretty.
straightforward.
It's pretty straightforward, and it's funny because like the last episode was just so dumb. This one, like, I feel like we've spent so little time talking about the episode, and like at the point we are right now in terms of the story, there's only like 2 minutes left of the episode. Like, there's really, like, if you were watching along with it, there's only 2 minutes left. Um, but
They
Donkey Kong
also have
fights.
this is
Sorry, go
also
on.
around where they add the music montage. In the I'm not sure what they're supposed to be spoofing though with this one. This is the first song where I've been like, I don't know what song this is supposed to be. She Freaks Me Out is the name of the song, it sounds like. But I can't tell what song they're parodying.
I'm not sure either. Um, some other quick notes before we get to the finale, though. Venus Turzo does the voice of Evil Lana as well. I think she does fantastic as Evil Lana. I actually think Venus Turzo is really good in this episode, despite, like, in general, and I never blame writers necessarily for shows like this that are clearly meant to be a cash grab, but like, it's the writing isn't the strongest suit, and so I think she did a lot with what little she was given. Like, I really think she did a pretty admirable job considering the source material that she has to act off of.
Yeah, she did a great like maniacal laugh too, which was
Hmm.
really good.
The other thing I wanted to say, I did think it was funny when I mentioned before, Mother Brain told Eggplant Wizard to go, get in the good graces of the evil witch doctor Conga, And Eggplant Wizard goes, "Oh, mama." Once again, with this weird like mother relationship that's going on. Like, I understand Mother Brain is named Mother Brain, but throughout the entirety of the show, there's never really been like this weird, like, "Oh, mama" type of thing. And in this episode, out of the blue, the decided, like, I genuinely wonder if Dennis O'Flaherty did not know that like Mother Brain isn't really a mother and it's just a name, and this is his, maybe he wrote this episode first, and then afterwards it was like, oh, they're not, there's no familial relationship, all right, and then just drops it, but doesn't remove it from this episode, doesn't go back to rewrite it. I don't know, that's pure conjecture and speculation, but it's goofy.
Or he just leaned really hard into that joke.
That could be it. That really could be it. And the episode ends with, I actually liked how this episode ends. For all of its flaws, the core like lesson in this episode is that Lana realizes like no one saves Lana. Lana is able to fight back and realizes that she can be a ruler all on her own, and she throws off the headdress on her own, and it's as simple and saves the day, because one, she throws it off, Donkey Kong takes that headdress and crushes it, which ends up saving everyone. But Lana is no longer being possessed by this thing, and she did it all on her own. She didn't need anybody to save her from the headdress. She did it all on her own, and I really like that. I like that she's struggling with being a ruler in the beginning of the episode, and then she uses that struggle that she conquers in order to win the day in this episode. So I actually think it's a really good character arc for her in this episode, even if the episode itself isn't really the best. What are your thoughts, though?
Yeah. The pacing of that information being doled out, I think, was really well done. As far as, I think, somewhat early on, she has it on and then kind of takes it off and puts it back on again. That she kind of shows that she's fighting against that behavior. I liked that kind of that pacing of it, where they actually showed how she was kind of fighting it a little bit, so that it was earned, even though it was a little obvious and it's a kind of a trope at this point. The way that they present it in this episode was actually, like, the timing of it was actually really well done.
I agree with you. But then it cuts back to the Palace of Power, and you find out that Princess Lana's initial decision about the cow actually turned off pretty well. They don't kill the cow and cut it in half, but the farmers realized to learn to share. Like, just because the cow's living on this dude's land doesn't, and he can get some of the fruits of the labor from it as well. So it kind of works out for both of them. And you mentioned at the end of last episode how Kevin kind of gives her like a compliment, and that's how the episode ends. And it was kind of the same for this one, where he says, what's the line? Hold on, I have it right here. He's like down on one knee, like about to like kiss her hand. I'm going to turn on the subtitles or closed captioning for this.
You've got to see the walk cycle too of them walking together. It's at like 20 minutes and 20 seconds. They're walking together in the Palace of Power, and a big no-no in animation, it's called twinning. It's when, something, in most cases it's with one body. If you do one thing with one side of the body, just normally we don't usually do things symmetrically as human beings. So when you see things happen symmetrically, but in this case, it's both Lana and Kevin are walking like in unison, like their arms and everything, and they've got the same, like, they're like bobbing at the same rate and everything. It's very off-putting.
It's that uncanny valley thing almost, but in animation. The final line, by the way, what it was is that Kevin basically says something along those lines of like they just know that you're a great ruler, and hold on, I'm butchering it. Hold on. The two guys, and actually the designs for those two villagers, by the way, who want the cow cut in half, are ridiculous. The one dude has no eyes and just yellow eyebrows, like not blonde, yellow. And then his hair is blonde, like a lighter shade of blonde. It's just so bizarre. But Kevin says, it sounds to me like they think that you're the greatest, and so do I. Or that's how the episode ends. He kisses Lana and she blushes, and that's how the episode ends. So like this romance between Kevin and Lana has really been getting a little bit more steamy as the season has gone on. Like, season 1, there was only really one moment where there was kind of like this little flirtatious thing back and forth. But in the last couple episodes, Lana and Kevin, they're spicing things up a little bit. There's some flirtatious energy being given off.
Yes. Yeah, the first season was more of a question like, wait, is there tension here between these two? And then this one's like, yeah, there's definitely tension.
Yeah, exactly. It's this episode just overall, I liked it more than the last one, the big game, but it still wasn't very strong. I still think, I don't know about you, Dex. I think the best episode of the season is Tetris so far. Trouble with Tetris. What do you think though?
I gotta remember which ones are which, but yeah, this one it's tough because entertainment value, like if I was going to force people to be like, you have to see this, I would choose the big game over this one, the previous episode.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Just because of, it's one of those, like, whenever you watch a movie, you either want it to be really good or you want it to be really bad, because anything in between is more forgettable, And that's kind of where this one falls. This one's a lot more forgettable because it gets in, it gets out, it does what it's supposed to do, and which makes it technically better than the previous episode, because at least this one makes sense. But on a more like entertainment level, the last episode is better. So it's a little difficult. I think I liked the Zelda episode, Quest for the Potion of Power. I liked Queen of the Apes. I liked the body swap. I'm one of the few people who like the Game Boy episode, even though Game Boy is annoying. Yeah, the first 3 episodes.
Game Boy has redeemed himself for me. I will say that.
Yeah, they definitely pulled back on how much they use him.
It's a lot smarter. No, I'm with you. And I think you're right. This episode's biggest sin is the fact that it's just boring. It's middling. It's there's not much to it. The plot is a lot easier to follow, even though it's just silly. The overall aesthetic, I actually really like. Like I said, I really like how they designed Congoland and all the enemies and all that other stuff in it. But there's just, for Donkey Kong becoming one of my favorite characters in the show, they really not underutilize him. They just do it in boring ways. I think the best time they ever utilized him was when Simon thought Donkey Kong was his mother. Like, I really enjoyed that episode back from season 1, but everything else in this has just been meh. I don't know. This episode overall is just meh. It was fine. I liked the lore. I liked the, designs, but I also think the animation in this season, I definitely think they got a budget cut, because I feel like the animation's cheaper in this season than it was in the first season. I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, the moments of, ooh, that was nice animation. There's only been a couple of them, and they're like little flourishes where they're really nice. They're not like for whole scenes, like the previous episode when Metal Man shoots his buzzsaws at King Hippo and Eggplant Wizard. There's this really fluid, really nice animation of the two of them like cowering away from the buzzsaw blades. And I can't remember if it was this episode or the previous. There's also a little moment, an action moment with Kevin that's actually animated really well. But whereas I feel like the first few episodes, the animation, there were a lot more moments like that.
Yeah.
Especially the Zelda episode. I'm sure they pulled out the budget for that one. Like, that felt like there were a lot more well animated moments in that episode. But yeah, these last couple ones, there have been some more wonky moments. Like, I had a freeze frame earlier of this episode where Kevin's eyes are like going in different directions, and he's and it's a zoom in on him. So it's like that's the only thing we have to focus on is his face, and it's just the features are very Mr. Potato Head, like placed in weird areas on there. But yeah, this is definitely bottom rung. It's tough though, because like I enjoyed watching the previous one more, even though this one was a better episode. So they're kind of neck and neck, this one and the previous episode.
Yeah, just I think that's how we're going to have to leave this episode off, because otherwise we're just going to keep repeating the same points of like, conceptually this episode is better, but in action it's boring, and that's how we're just going to leave it. So that should do it for this episode of Still Loading, this newest Captain N episode. Dexter, thank you once again for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I am very impressed with us. I'm very impressed with your son for being able to sleep through a near 2-hour recording session. We haven't been able to do this in like a year, and I'm very happy we knocked out these two right in time for the busiest portion of the year too. So we are going to be good until January now. So that will do it for this episode. Dexter, like I'm just repeating my shit again. Dexter, where can everybody find you online?
Oh, as usual, you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. It's just, you can look up my name, Dexter Morrill, DexterMorrill. You can find me on there sharing video game stuff, sharing artwork stuff, my artwork, my students' artwork. So you can find me on there. Yeah, I guess probably around now I'm either have or will soon be sharing my students' final projects. They do a master copy. They recreate a professional image, and I give them each a piece. I grid out that professional image, and I give them each a piece, and they redo that, and they have to stitch it all together, and it makes one really big master copy. It's really fun. We did like Superman, Batman, World's Finest, the cover of issue 1 last year. Got some fun stuff planned for this year. So if that kind of stuff is cool, come check it out. Come follow me, and I'll see you there.
And as for me, as usual, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Still Loading Pod on all of them. At the time this episode's coming out, who knows if Twitter will still be a thing? But that's another story for another day. Anyway, but you at Still Loading Pod on all of them. If you want to email me, you can email me stillloadingcontact@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, please consider giving it a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you use. That really helps more people find the show. I like seeing feedback from everybody. It really means a lot to me, and it only takes a moment of your time. And it would really mean the world to me if you took a little bit, and preferably a 5-star rating. Hopefully you've been enjoying this Captain N series and enjoyed this episode. So thank you so much for that. If you want to support me monetarily, if you like it enough to just throw a couple bucks my way, I give you a little bit in return. For $1 a month, you get the episodes a few days early, as well as with better audio quality, and as well as access to a patron exclusive Discord. For $4 a month, you'll get everything at that $1 tier, plus 2 bonus mini episodes a month. At the time this comes out, who knows what they're going to be, because this is being recorded in advance. But at the time this is being recorded, I just recently released an episode on which was a tribute to Rieko Kodama, who was of Sega fame. She legendary game designer who actually passed away back in May, but we didn't find out until a week or two ago. $4 a month, you get 2 bonus mini episodes a month. And then for $5 a month, you get everything before the mini episodes, the patron exclusive Discord, the early access, everything at the $1 and $4 tiers, all that good stuff. Plus a bonus podcast called Still Bonding, which is a monthly podcast where my friend Erica Gwynn and I go through all of the James Bond movies. At the time this episode comes out, it's either going to be right around the time Thunderball is being released or will release in a short amount of time, or so it should be right around then. It depends on when Thunderball comes out, but that is coming out the same month this episode is being released. So if that interests you and you want to support the show, it would mean the world to me, and you get all that cool stuff over at patreon.com/stillloadingpod. But the most important shout out is the Bit by Bit Foundation. The Bit by Bit Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to put video games and video game consoles in the hands of kids receiving inpatient care at hospitals. So if you want to support them, go to bitbybitfoundation.org and consider donating. And that will do it for this episode of the Still Loading podcast. Dexter, thank you once again for joining me.
Thank you. And we will think of you the next time
we play video
games.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.